Have you walked into a room before and you saw a board game or a card game that you hadn't seen before, ever? And you picked it up and wondered, what sort of game is this? Well, you shouldn't wonder anymore because I'll be talking about the different ways that tabletop games can be classified. My name is Casey and welcome to You Tabletop Games and In this episode, I'll be talking about the various ways that tabletop games can be classified. I'll be building on popular international standards, and I'll also be using my experience being active in the tabletop games industry here in Nigeria. So let's start from the top. Number one, based on core components. And this is one of the most popular ways of categorizing tabletop games. I'm talking about board games, and a good example is the snake and ladder game. We have the card games. What falls right into this category? We have the dice games. We have Ludo for this. We have the miniature games, and of course, we have the role play games. And a good example of a role play game is the Dungeons and Dragons, or the father and mother games we played in the 90s when growing up. Another way of categorizing game is the play style, and I'm talking about the game mechanics. And some of those styles include straight, and a good example is the instant act game. We have the fast-paced style, which is concentration card game. We have the resource management and resource distribution style, which is Stone Age, one of my favorite games to play. We have the card shedding style, we have the bluffing style like Spy and Settlers, Amongst Us, Mafia, and we have a lot, actually quite a lot of game mechanics. So that is another way you get to classify or you get to categorize tabletop games. Then comes one of my most favorite way of categorizing games based on the strategy level, right? So is it a casual game? So casual games can be categorized as games that requires a bit more of strategy than luck. However, the gap are not much alike. It could be strategy for 50% and luck 50%, or strategy for 60% and luck for 40%. And a good example could be, looking for a popular game. We could use Monopoly for this actually, because it's a strategy game, but not entirely or deeply into strategy because there are elements of luck on the game. Another is the light strategy game. So light strategy games, they very very much more requires more thinking or more intentional actions compared to the casual game. And a good example is the Hunt. The Hunt for me is a light strategy game, and then we have the mid strategy games that requires more hours to play, more components, and obviously the thinking or the strategy is a bit more in depth than the ones I've mentioned. And then we have the heavy strategy games. This is where, personally for me, I'm still not very very versatile in these areas of games. And one game we're trying to be able to play and enjoy and conquer is the Spirit Island. It's a heavy weight strategy game, in my own opinion. Anyway, this one is my best way of classifying game because it solves problems for me, and because I run a tabletop games cafe, so it's easier when I classify games, and because I also sell my game designs, this is one of the best way of classifying games or categorizing games. So I'll call it categorization based on usage. So what are you using the game for? So, and I have the list like party games, because when you hear party games, it means these games are primarily designed for parties. And then we'll have quite a lot of games in party games. We have Giddy Words, we have So You Think You're Nigerian, we have um, Greatest Nigerian, we have Instant Words, Concentration, Show Me. Quite a lot of games fit into the party games. Another is your family games. And what differentiates games to be a family game? For me, I think it's when the parents and the kids can play and they have almost an equal standard or an equal standing to win. So they both have equal opportunity without each of them trying to minimize their skill when playing that game. So as long as the child, maybe age 10, can play the game with the parents and have a chance to read. That is a family game, and obviously the language of the game also determine what a family game is. Right. So example of a good family game, in my own opinion, quite a lot to be honest. We have our school competitions, and I'm deliberately calling games from Nigeria. So in case you want to build your game library and you're looking for games in Nigeria, educational games. So games that have specific objectives. So there are intentionality behind the design. Maybe you want to educate people on climate change or on gender inequality or on certain health topic, but the games are usually intentional and set to achieve educational purposes. Some games like that for us, there are civil education games like Greatest Nigeria. We have Plan for climate actions. We have quite a lot of games in the education sector. In the education categorization, two-player games. And in two-player games, you're seeing games like Bosi or games like Pagoda, right? So games that either strictly for two players or can take a minimum of two players to enjoy the game. And then while I'm here, I'll also tell you about the solo games. So games that only one person can play and still have a good time. And a good example is Terraforming Mars is a good example of a solo game. And the final category I have for you is the category based on theme. So what is the theme of the game? That is a good way to categorize or classify your tabletop games. So is it an abstract game? So games where you see a lot of lines and figures and numbers, and there are not really any direct story to make off the game, or is it a word based game? So if it's a word team game, that means it's most likely be about languages or alphabets or letters. Or is it a storytelling game? So if it's a storytelling game, okay, this is the theme of the game. Or is it an educational game? So is it a game that is about to raise or is it a game that will be used to raise an awareness about a particular topic in the society? So that would be the theme of the game. So here you have it. These are different ways you can categorize your tabletop games. And when next you walk into a game and you pick up that game that looks new, like you've never seen it before, just from the design around it, you would be able to categorize it. Hope this episode was useful to you and you were able to learn something new. If you feel you have something you want to share, please comment right below. Subscribe, share some of our clips if you see them, and help us build this tabletop games industry here in Nigeria, here in Africa. Once again, this is Casey and it's you, Tabletop Games, and I. Bye.